Alright guys, today's June 26th and I want to talk about the weather pattern over the next few weeks. Who's going to see high heat, who's going to see below normal temperatures, and who could see some stronger storm clusters. So today we'll be looking at the EPS model, which is basically the European model's ensembles all averaged out together. And we're going to be starting off with the 500 millibar height anomalies. Anything in orange is upper level ridges, and anything in blue is upper level troughs. And each of these lines is called an isohypsy, or a line of equal geopotential height. And so whenever you have a 591 isohypsy or greater, like here I'm highlighting, that shows you where you have a pretty intense upper level ridge in place during the summer, where you're going to have those heat waves occurring and those heat domes. But looking at the upper level pattern for today on June 26th, notice how that large heat dome that was over the east coast has dissipated, and it turned into more zonal flow now. That's why we have a lot of cold fronts moving through, and the core of that upper level ridge that was causing that heat has shifted westward over to the Four Corners region, and that's where the majority of the heat has gone as of now. And also over Canada, we have a lot of troughiness going on, even below normal temperatures occurring there at this moment. Lots of cold fronts moving through across the east coast now. It became more of a progressive pattern. No more blocking happening at the moment. But just going out in time here, notice over the next few days, we have a lot of troughiness across the north with that progressive pattern. Basically, it means like a hot day and then followed by a cold day, and then followed by like 2 days of warmth, 2 days of cool. Very progressive pattern with cold fronts and ridges in between. And that should be occurring over the next few weeks before around early July. We have the potential to see a pretty large upper level ridge develop across the southern states, the southern plains also. For reference, here's the 591 isohypsy line right in there. We even have a 597 showing up here with the EPS model over the southern plains. That tells me that we could be talking about a pretty intense heat wave developing across the southern states, and to the north of that. It should probably stay into a more progressive pattern across the far northern states and into southern Canada. What that means is that we could be seeing some storm clusters across the northern states as we get those cold fronts to round the northern edge of that the heat dome that could develop across the southern states into early July. And then going beyond that, looks like that the core of that heat will stay across the south, where we have a lot of ridging in place into early July, and with the more troughiness to the north near the Canada border. And then going all the way out to around July 10th, that's basically what the pattern looks like it might get stuck as, with a lot of ridging going on across the southern states. That's where we'll have the highest potential for above normal temperatures, the highest potential for extreme heat. And then so going to around July 10th, the EPS model is showing that pretty large ridge in place across the southern states. That'll produce pretty hot weather in that area, above normal temperatures, potential for heat waves, less precipitation when you're under that heat dome. And then for reference, here's the 591 line. So anywhere south of there where you could have some pretty intense heat. And to the north of that, especially here from the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes region and into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, it looks like what could be a northwest flow pattern that could set up. And what that means is that this is an area where you could have several rounds of intense thunderstorms and thunderstorm clusters that ride over top of that upper level ridge. These are called ridge riding thunderstorms. They could be pretty strong to intense, and if that high pressure area stays to the south for many days in a row, you could be talking about many days of thunderstorm potential for that area highlighted there. So just something to keep an eye on. Potential for severe storms like that. Flooding could be a possible issue. But I know some areas do need the rain after the heat wave last week. And then comparing the EPS with the other models for around July 10th, here's the GEFS. It's showing about the same thing. Upper level ridge across the southern states, producing some pretty hot weather for that area, above normal temperatures, potential heat waves. And to the north of that, it's also showing a bit of a northwest flow pattern. So in that area highlighted there would also be a potential for many days of storm clusters, severe thunderstorms. Flooding problems could be an issue if it occurs for many days in a row. And then looking at the CMCE, which is the Canadian model, same thing for around July 10th, showing that upper level ridge across the southern states. And then to the north of that, it's showing the northwest flow pattern across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and into the Mid-Atlantic region. So with all three of the models showing that gives me pretty good confidence that as we go into July, the southern states should be under an upper level ridge, producing some pretty hot weather in that area, which means also less precipitation, less rainfall. And it gives me pretty high confidence that the Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic region, that area and there, it will be in a pretty good spot to be in that northwest flow pattern to get ridge right and thunderstorms, several days of thunderstorm clusters, something to keep an eye on because they could be quite severe and they could produce flash flooding, especially when you get a lot in a row, like I just said. And comparing the temperature anomalies from all three models, this is for July 10th. This is for around July 10th, and the EPS model is showing above normal temperatures for pretty much everyone, but especially from the Rocky Mountain area and then right across the southern states, like I just highlighted there, under that core of that upper level high, and with more near normal temperatures for the Northeast into the northern Great Lakes region, where we'll be under that northwest flow pattern and out of that upper level high and into more of a trophy pattern, with more near normal temperatures for the Northeast region and to the northern Great Lakes, where they'll be under that northwest flow pattern and to the north of that upper level high. Here's the GEFS model for July 10th temperature anomalies. Same thing. Notice the core of the above normal temperatures, warmth will be across the southern states, under that upper level high, and then even below normal temperatures from the upper Midwest to the Great Lakes and Northeast, where they'll be under that northwest flow pattern. Could be a lot of rainy days, a lot of cold fronts moving through that'll keep temperatures down into mid-July, potentially. And then looking at the Canadian model, the first thing you notice is it's showing way above normal temperatures. The CMCE tends to overdo the heat, so don't pay too much attention to that. But just pay attention to where it's showing the most warmth, which is across the Great Plains and the southern states, which is where that upper level high will be. And then notice where it's showing the best chance to see cooler weather will be across the northeastern states, where they will be under that northwest flow pattern, like I said, and to the north of that high. So there'll be a lot of cold fronts moving through in that area there. So what I get from this is that the models are showing that the core of the warmth will be across the southern states, while areas across the northeast of the Great Lakes have the best chance to stay a little more below average into early and perhaps mid-July. So the potential for any extreme heat across the Great Lakes and northeast is pretty low at the moment, but I do expect some pretty extreme heat to develop across the southern states under that upper level high pressure area. And then here's a look at precipitation and rainfall from all three models through July 10th. Here's the European model showing the core of the rain to be across the north and across the Gulf Coast of Florida, with the least occurring around Texas, which should be directly below that high pressure area, that upper level ridge that develops. So that'll produce very little rainfall in that area, with less rainfall in general for the southern states. Here's the GEFS model showing about the same thing. It's showing more rain for the southeastern states, but notice it's showing the same thing for Texas. Very little rainfall in that area under the core of that high pressure area that could develop. And then here's the Canadian model showing the core of that rainfall here across the Great Lakes region, and parts of the Midwest where we could get that northwest flow pattern going. Many days of thunderstorms possible into early and mid-July in that area there. And notice the Canadian is also showing the same thing. So all three models are showing very little rainfall for Texas over the next couple of weeks. We could be talking about flash drought conditions occurring there, along with the extreme heat. And then lastly, I want to show just the temperatures for around the July 10th time. Now, don't take this too seriously because this is still about 2 weeks away, very far out in the future. So don't take the numbers too seriously. Just focus on the trend here. Here's the EPS model showing temperatures near 100 across the southern plains states and a lot of upper 90s across the south. Here's the GEFS showing about the same things, about 100-degree temperatures likely across the southern plains and upper 90s across the southeastern states. And here's the Canadian showing about the same thing. Like I said, the Canadian runs a bit too hot, I think, but it's showing about the same thing with the core of the heat across the southern plains and even across portions of the southeastern states. So what I get from this is that at least at some point in early to mid-July, I think a large portion of the southern plains has the best chance to see temperatures in the triple digits, something that could continue for several days in a row. I also am pretty confident that a lot of the southeastern states and up to the Carolinas, maybe Virginia, could see several days in the upper 90s. So basically over the next 2 weeks, I am pretty confident that the core of the heat will be across the southern plains and into the southeastern states and Carolinas, kind of in that area there, with the best potential for a triple-digit heat across places like Texas, Oklahoma, southern Kansas, Arkansas, northern Louisiana. I think that's going to be where the brunt of the heat occurs. And under the dome of high pressure, I do think much of Texas is going to dry out and get very little rainfall over the next few weeks. While portions of the southeastern states from Mississippi over to the Carolinas, I think it'll be still in the mid to upper 90s for several days in a row over the next 2 weeks. And then over the next 2 weeks, I'm getting more confident that this area up here, or let me redraw that, more like this area in here, will be in the potential for northwest flow type pattern, where we could get several days in a row of storm clusters and thunderstorm potential, as those storms ride over top the ridge, called ridge riders. We have to keep an eye out for flash flooding in this area, but this will keep temperatures down. It'll be a bit more seasonable as we get into early and mid-July for this area here I have highlighted. Even the potential to see extreme heat is it's not zero, but it's not very high at the moment as we go into early to mid-July. From the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, into the Northeast. The Northeast especially New England, right in this area, New England should stay pretty below average as we get into early and mid-July. A lot of days in the 70s possible. And I don't see any heat waves for the northern tier of the country much at all over the next few weeks. Sure, there'll be a couple hot days here and there, but I don't see any prolonged heat waves at the moment for the northern tier of the country. And with that being said, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next time.